Welcome everybody to Unstuck Worldwide Grief Café, my very second episode. I'm super excited about this episode. In honor of Valentine's Day, while we're in the season of celebrating love, it's important also to talk about what relationships look like beyond love. So today we'll be discussing grief, love, and marriage. What does grief look like in marriage? So what is Grief Café? Grief Café is a sacred space. It's a relaxed atmosphere. It's a place where we share the life, love, laughter, and the legacy of those who have transitioned on. It's a great conversation about grief and love over a cup of coffee, a tasty treat, a favorite drink. Whatever you bring to the table, that's how we come together, commune to discuss love. We're just not going to talk about death. We're also going to celebrate life. We're going to honor those who are still living. As they say, give the flowers to those that are still living and not when they've passed on. We know that grief is exclusive also to loss, change, transition, finding meaning, and becoming in the midst of all of the grief that we go through on a daily basis. I am Ke'Shawn Hill-Adamson. I am your certified grief coach, educator, grief movement guide, grief and loss public speaker. I am also the author of My Love Letters to the Grieving, You Are Not Alone. And I am the host of Unstuck Worldwide Grief Café. I am so grateful to be here, and I'm grateful you're here with us. Before we get started, I know that a lot of times grief can bring up heightened emotions. So I want us to be trauma informed, that if during any conversation that we're having, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling overwhelmed, please feel free to step away. I also want to share with you that I am not a licensed medical professional. So at any point, again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, please feel free to step away. And if you are experiencing thoughts of self-harm, please call 911 immediately or 988 for immediate assistance. You matter, your life matters, your self-care matters to us. So in the last episode, we talked about the importance of saying our loved one's name. Why is that important to say their name? We want to say their name because they lived, they loved, they matter to us, and they still matter to the people that we're around. But just as important, we also want to say the names of the people who are still living. We want to honor them. We want to share their impact on their life and those who have walked with us along the way. So today, I have the very special honor to just celebrate someone that I love very dearly. It's one of the most phenomenal people I have ever met, someone I deeply admire and I deeply respect, one of my favorite people walking the planet. I've known him since we were kids. I've had the honor of growing up with him until adulthood. He is absolutely the love of my life, one of my very best friends, and someone I deeply respect as a human being. He is the sunlight that walks into my room and the hero of my household. Please help me welcome my second guest, Richard Adamson II. Hey, babe!
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited.
Hey, listen, we've been talking about this for a while, so it's here.
The day is here. So while we're at Grief Cafe, we're not just going to talk. We like to have a little snack. We like to have a little drink. So what are you bringing to the table today?
I'm having my nighttime tea.
Your nighttime tea. Let me see your cup.
Yes.
Fordham University.
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah, Fordham graduate. Yeah, it's my nighttime tea. It's a tea with herbs that help you calm you. So I drink it in the evening, as you know.
Okay. So I am bringing to the table my nighttime tea, my Iona University. Woo, woo.
We have similar colors. You know that, right?
We do. The burgundy and the gold. Yes, we do. So every day I have my mom makes me some ginger tea. That is like her thing that she does for me. While she's making her tea, she makes mine. Shout out to my Mima, to our Mima of the house. So so we have our tea. All right. So for those that are meeting you for the first time, who are you beyond being my husband?
I am Richard Adamson II. I'm a former drug counselor, social worker, minister, elder, human service professional, a father, a former music artist, a former actor, amateur comedian, formerly, a lot of things.
I always say that you are an onion. You got many layers.
Yeah, I had a lot of dreams, a lot of things I wanted to do. So, my father used to always tell me that one of the mistakes he made was not fulfilling all of his dreams or aspirations. So he planted that seed in me to have goals and try to achieve as many of them while you're alive and healthy. So that's why I dabbled in so many different arts and careers.
Okay. Let's talk about how we met. So what was our first encounter?
Sorry.
And what were your first impressions of me in our first encounter?
My first impression of sorry.
You laughing.
Yeah, because you know what I'm getting ready to say.
Yeah.
They came to my mind when I seen you, I was like, ooh.
Right.
Yeah. When our friend brought you around, Toshi, when she brought you around, and her brother Ben and Kyle, and we all used to hang out together. I used to more or less hang out with Ben and Kyle because Toshi was a little older.
Okay.
And then, that one day she came to the block with you. I was like, I don't think I was the same since.
Man, how old were you when that happened?
Maybe 12 or 13.
Okay. I think you were 12 and I was 13.
Yeah.
So what happened? How did we actually meet?
Well, I started trying to talk to you, but as a 12-year-old kid, I didn't have no game or no lines to spit at you. So I think I got on your nerves. And you kind of like semi-cursed me out.
I cursed you out?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that happened until we actually, like, years later, we were adults talking one day, and you actually told me what I said, and I was mortified. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I say that to you? I'm sorry,
yeah,
Lord.
You did.
Sorry, Lord.
You did. You hurt my feelings and all that, man.
So what I remember is, you coming up to me and be like, I know who you are. I know who your boyfriend is. I know where you live. And at the time, I had a lot of little boys picking on me because some of them thought I was cute and some of them were just jerks. And so I always was having a fight. And so I thought you was one of them. And I guess that day I wasn't having it. So sorry, babe.
Yeah, well, the bad thing about it is, like, young boys like me at that time, we, when we're attracted to a young lady, we're still in our developmental process. So we don't know how to express it. So we usually do something to either unintentionally get on the young lady's nerves or embarrass ourselves. So we have it hard. Yeah, we have it tough.
So our journey didn't start just all at once. It unfolded over time. It unfolded when we were preteens and then into our teenage years and our adulthood. If you could share how that unfolded, because while we were growing up, we always were circling each other in high school. Yeah. So I would always see you walking down the street. You would always see me. Mm-hmm. At the time, I had a little boyfriend, so I was always waving. And so it was like, hi, Ke'Shawn. And, it was like that type of exchange. But then when we became adults, that's when our relationship started to turn the corner. So what was that like when everything changed, when you and I officially met to get on this trajectory?
You know what? That question is a profound question. I'll tell you why, because here's my answer. That day, it was like I got to know God all over again, or know him better. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I got a chance to see my father be a husband to my mother. So I always wanted to be a husband. You know what I'm saying? My father was like my first hero. So I always wanted to be a husband. So I'm like, God, give me a wife. God, I was praying that prayer since I was like a kid, you know what I'm saying? Like a preteen or a teenager. But I prayed that throughout my life. But then, I hit them teenage years and hormones and all of that. So I made some, compromising decisions. So I kind of thought I messed it up in a way, maybe. But that day I walked out of the building at a 33 in New Row, that's the popular building. Everybody calls it 33. And you were sitting on the bench. And I remember always saying hi to you. And you would say hi to me, but you would kind of keep it moving. So that day I said, I'm going to mess with Ke'Shawn. I'm going to come sit next to her. But I didn't realize that was God's plan. And then when you started talking to me, that changed my life forever. My life has never been the same since that moment, because that's when our relationship started to materialize and it led us to being married. So the reason why I say that I got to know God all over again, because those prayers that I prayed about being a husband when I was a young man or a kid, he answered it years later.
Wow.
And so I don't want to say, I'm ashamed to say maybe I underestimated God, because sometimes you could pray for something when you're 15 and he answers that prayer when you're 30, but that's when you're ready.
Yeah.
So he knew how bad I wanted you.
Let's pause right there. So let's pause right there. How bad you wanted me. So before that day we sat on the bench, what were your attempts like? Let's backtrack that, because that led up to that moment in time of me sitting on the bench.
Well, I remember the first time I asked you for your number. I told you how beautiful you was. And I was really young then. I may have been about 19. I asked you for your number. I got your number. We talked like 2 or 3 times, and then I would call, and then I wouldn't get an answer anymore. So we had a terrible beginning.
Go
ahead. First you cursed me out.
First I cursed him out, and then the second time I gave him the number and didn't return the call. So I'm sorry. I had a lot of apologizing to do.
He still got some apologies. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. So I'm in college. You're in K-Sec school. And
yeah, I was in school to be a drug counselor, and I was also making music with a band called ESP. And so I, wanted to prove to myself that I was a man. So I set my eyes on a woman that I knew was about something, and that was you. Because one thing I know about a man, from being taught by my father and my uncles and everybody, is that a real man goes for a real woman. And a woman who's about something, like, you can't approach a woman who's about something if in your heart you ain't about nothing. And I knew in my heart that I was about something, because that's just how I was taught, how I was raised. So I looked at you. So when I felt rejection at that time, it hit me. So in the beginning, it didn't look like it was going to come together. So that night when I seen you and we started talking, I wasn't ready for that. I was a little caught off guard.
Yeah. So even in the introduction, there was grief. Before it even got started, you were grieving over the fact that you were rejected, and that the person you had your eye on didn't respond the way you would have liked, didn't give you the time of day. What I had to realize later, what I didn't know how to say, was that day that you stopped me and was like, "You're so beautiful." The night before, I was partying, so you caught me with a scarf on my head, with neon green running pants, with a sweater on, just trying to run to the store and run back home, not wanting to see anybody. So I was so mortified that you stopped me and was like, "You're so beautiful." And I was just like, my gosh, I just wanted the earth to swallow me. And
but you was looking good to me, though.
Thank you. That's why we're together now, because you surpassed my neon green running man pants, my swishies.
Real men like that. We don't mind you dressing up, but we like that around the house, around the way look too, because it's natural. So when I seen you come out like that, I did it again. I was like, ooh, that's ooh wee,
And at that particular time, I was grieving because I was in a relationship that wasn't working. All my hopes and dreams, eggs in that basket, it just wasn't coming to pass. So I was in grief, and I didn't know how to verbalize that. I didn't know. And we discussed it the other day with my mom, Mima. And what we were talking about is, but you gave me your number. I did, because you were such a nice guy. And I did not want to give you my number, but I didn't know how to verbalize, hey, I'm kind of broken right now, and I don't know how to tell you that. So when you would call, I didn't know how to say it. And I felt really bad because I've known you all my life. And I didn't know how to say, hey, I'm broken. I didn't have the language to be able to say that. And that I was grieving over a relationship I thought was supposed to work, that I was trying to make work, that was not of God. So before we even got started, you were grieving because of the rejection. I was grieving because I was in an ungodly relationship. And there we got started. So fast forward to the moment that we mentioned about sitting on the bench. So you, as a drug counselor, worked in where I lived. You worked in the building where I lived. So while the transition time where I was working through healing from that relationship, you were going about your business with a career. And what God was doing behind the scenes is that at one point I rejected you, but at a later date, God impressed you on my heart. And then all of a sudden, it was like things shifted. And so there was a point of time where you were kicking it to me for a while. Even after that time when I never returned your calls, you still pursued me. And you still, even to the point where I'm in church and I'm in a meeting and you pulled me out of church meeting to invite me to a poetry reading that you were doing in the city. So it never, even at that point, you never stopped pursuing me. And
go ahead. No, because it was more than just coming at you for your looks. Like I said, I always had this thing about being a man, and I didn't want to pick or choose a woman that was, like younger than me, or just maybe not about anything, because that's not going anywhere. A real man, a man with a healthy mind, understands that he needs direction. And my parents had given me direction. You represented somebody as a woman with direction. So when I experienced the rejection from you, I was like, it bothered me because I always fell in that nice guy stereotype. Like, I was rejected by females growing up because I wasn't, as a black man, you're supposed to have swagger. You're supposed to be, especially in our generation, I don't want to say hardcore, but rough exterior, all of that. So, my father raised me to be a gentleman. My mother raised me to be compassionate. And so sometimes around a lot of women I grew up around that I was attracted to, they ain't really feel that. And so I guess that was my grief. It was like, as a young black man, what are you supposed to do? If you try to act like you don't feel and have any feelings and you're just a player, then you're condemned for that. But then if you're compassionate and you have a heart, then nice guys finish last. So when I experienced the rejection from you, it was like, man, is this nightmare going to ever end? So I kept pursuing for a little while, because I just was like, not trying to overdo it, but I was just trying to like show you that I was really interested, like that this wasn't a game.
And you did just that. And because the last time it was over a period of time. It was over a period of years. Like every time you would see me, you know, you would give me that big smile and a beautiful greeting. But this one particular time, I was on my way to church, and you stopped me for that last time. And I really felt led. I had made it up in my mind. I was going to tell you what was going on. Like I was going to be honest. And so I said to you, and you was just like, hey, so when you want to let me take you on a date? Like, what is it? Like, and you really was asking, and you were playing with me and asking. And I was like, you know, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to verbalize this, but I was in a really long-term relationship, and I'm really broken right now. And I didn't know how to tell you that. And I'm really sorry about that. And I should have said that a long time ago, because I know I caused you heartbreak in the beginning, and I didn't know how to say it. I just apologized, and you understood, you accepted my apology, but that was the last time you kicked it. And then years went by. And from that moment on, like everything in that moment was like a supernatural moment. It was like, for the first time, it was like being in like a jazz video where you see the street lights, the golden amber of the street lights, and you were looking all illuminated, and like it almost looked like the heavens was shining behind you. And for the first time, it was like I saw God's glory in you. And from that moment on, it was like you didn't leave my heart. And so in my thoughts and in my heart every day from that moment for years, like even when we didn't see each other, you were still in my heart. And I was thinking about you, I was dreaming about you, and it was crazy because you were all those things for me. You were feeling like all those things for me, and then the roles reversed, and then I was feeling all those ways for you. You had no idea. And I was
I didn't even know that you was even thinking about me.
I was thinking about you every moment.
But I had no clue, because what I was used to was women like yourself who are beautiful, intelligent, educated, career-driven, gifted. Romantically, they wasn't paying me no attention. And so that's what I was experiencing with you at one time. So I had no idea that I was even a thought on your mind, to be honest with you.
And you were. And so one particular day, I had come from a service at church in Rochelle, and I said, you know what, let me sit outside and see if I'll see him, because I had gotten up the courage cookies, and I was like, the next time I'm gonna see him, I'm gonna tell him. And then I'm sitting on the bench, and I'm waiting for a while, and I'm like, I had the courage cookies to be able to
I never heard that before.
I had the courage cookies to get up my courage to be able to, you know, say something to you. So I sat on that bench in front of my building, because you worked in the building. And so I'm waiting, and then you never came out. And I was like, I'm not sitting outside. You know, my pride got to me. I was like, I'm not sitting outside waiting for anybody. I'm going upstairs. But then as I was going upstairs, the Holy Spirit said to me, no, don't go upstairs. Wait, he's coming out of the building. And I looked like, what? Go back. Go. He was like, the Holy Spirit said, go sit back outside. And I heard that in my heart, go sit back outside. And it was like a real energy, like, go sit back outside. So I'm like, okay. So I sat back outside feeling real stupid. And I called my girl, my best friend, and I'm like, hey, what you doing? I'm on the phone with her trying to kill time. The next thing you know is God said it. You came walking out the building. As soon as he said you came walking out the building. And then you didn't just walk by and say hello. You went and sat on the bench next to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shoot, the Holy Spirit really said that. Like, he was setting that up. And so you sat on the bench, and you was like, hey, Ke'Shawn. I was like, hey, I was waiting for you. And you looked like, what?
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
And then from that point, I kicked it.
And I thought you was going to be like, hi, Rich. Like I
always did. Not that day. I was ready. I was both feet in. And I'm like, hey, I was waiting for you. And then we talked, and you know, you was just like, you know, I'm dating somebody. I was like, I'm sorry to hear that. And you look like, what? And so we talked until the wee hours on the bench in the morning. And, you know, we had decided, like, okay, you're in a relationship, like I was at that particular moment before. So it wasn't timing. It just wasn't timing. And, you know, we was like, okay, well, if that doesn't work out, then, you know, perhaps one day, maybe, I don't know. But we both agreed, like, nah, I'm not touching that with a 10-inch pole. So that's what happened. And then some time went by, and that relationship didn't work. And then we became friends from that point forward.
Yeah, well, when I first was trying to talk to you, I was very green, inexperienced. Like, you know, you had some experience with relationships and dating. But when I was young, I really didn't have like that type of a social life like that. You know what I mean? So, but when we had not seen each other for a few years, that's when I got with my band, my music group, and then I had got my feet wet into my career. So I started getting attention that I wasn't used to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I wasn't used to girls giving me their number and doing all this. But then one day that started to happen. So when you weren't in the picture, I was like, maybe, especially when I heard that you had traveled out the country, I was like, man, I don't even know if she'll be back anytime soon. So I was just like, and then I ended up in that relationship. That just, I don't have good memories with it. But all I can say is that, it was an abusive relationship. I was, a woman who I was with was very verbally abusive towards me and stuff like that. So I don't think that was God's will for me. But I'm glad I experienced that pain, because when me and you made it to the altar, I learned how important it is to wait on God and do it God's way. Mm-hmm. Because those wounds and those scars that I got, thank God they didn't break me. God made me strong. But they caused me to reevaluate the path I had gotten on. So when he sent you, I knew I had a lot of spiritual growth and healing to do. And it was a tough journey, but I had to do it. But it was a unique experience, I must say. Or should I say a very profound experience, because when I first was trying to talk to you, I was green. I barely had a girlfriend and barely had, you know what I'm saying? Barely been on dates without my mother chaperoning or driving. You know what I'm saying?
That's funny.
No, I'm saying, because you talking about me like at 19, 20, 18, like when I was in high school, I did that. My mother would be like, okay, I'm gonna drive you to pick up your date so y'all can go to the movies or the haunted house or whatever. I really, like the streets would say, I really wasn't getting no action like that. I was green. Very green. You encountered me the second time, it was a lot different.
So let's talk about anticipated trajectory. Anticipated trajectory it's the plans that you're imagining, the future that you're imagining, the plans you're making, what you're hoping for. You're talking about what life would look like. When you think about getting with your future husband, you think of all these, or future wife, you're thinking of all these magical, spiritual moments. But ours didn't start off that way. No. And sometimes grief starts right there, is when the things that you hope for, the things that you would have loved, doesn't quite span out that way. Our anticipated trajectory was a lot different than what we imagined. And it started off with some rejection. It started off with a lot of waiting. It started off with some heartbreak, things like that. We imagined just having this blissful, courting period and then getting married. But what really happened was something very different. So what did anticipated reality, that means what actually happened, what did that look like from the time we sat on that bench until the time we said, I do? What did grief and loss look like leading up to that point?
Well, it looked like a roller coaster ride, to be honest with you. And the reason why I say that is because I anticipated, this is love. Could this be love? Like, could this, and I'm saying, could this be? Because every time I think about our beginning, it makes me think of that song. There's a favorite song I used to have by Jimi Hendrix, Could This Be Love? And I'm thinking, could this be love? And it's a beautiful sound and beautiful colors and beautiful, right? But what actually happened was, it was a conquest. It was a journey, because we experienced pain and we experienced loss. We experienced tests, challenges on so many levels. Like, I could just start with spiritual. I can't speak for you, even though I know a lot of your story because we're husband and wife. But for me, the relationships that I had been in, I had a lot of spiritual wounds and scars and soul ties. So when I came in contact with you, those evil forces that were trying to consume me and destroy me, whenever you came around, they would start going crazy. Like, I could literally feel them. And I remember one day me and you was hanging out together, and you said it. You was like, I keep feeling like something in the atmosphere. And those were evil forces from Satan that didn't want me around you because they wanted me destroyed. So spiritually, I remember when I had to go to the altar and you had to pray over me, and my body would jerk and move and I could feel stuff coming off of me. Then life was lifing. Yeah. I remember when my cousin got shot in Mount Vernon. He got shot. He died. He didn't make it. And a lot of people that I was expecting to be there for me was not. And I was just like, man, like I was hurt. And I was like, all of reaching out for people that I try to do, all the stuff in the community that I try to do, you can't even be there when I lose my family. The only person that was really there and really didn't have to be was you. Mm-hmm. So that drew us closer because everybody else, was kind of like, life happens. So it was traumatic because I do understand that death happens, but murder puts a different spin on how you deal with it. Yeah. Because you wonder if that family member was ready. You wonder if they were scared. You wonder what they saw. And then you wonder where they wake up in eternity. This is the reality. So when you was there, I remember that day you brought me food to my job because being a drug counselor is very difficult because your life is happening. You're grieving. You're hurting. But then you have to leave that all at the door to be there for other people who are trying to fight drug addiction and trauma and all that stuff. Yeah. So you was there for me and I had to be vulnerable in front of you, which was difficult because I don't like crying in front of people and it has nothing to do with ego. It's just I'm a private person. Yeah. So when I had to cry in front of you and you had to hold me and all of that in the beginning of our relationship, I wondered, I'm like, Dag, she's seeing so much of my drama before we even get to the altar. I wonder if she's gonna want to deal with this. Because I have preachers in my family and a lot of people who was doing great things, but then I have a part of my family who was caught up in things. And my cousin got killed and it was a lot. And then I think a year or two later, when me and you had gotten closer on our way to the altar, you lose somebody very close to you.
I lost my dad.
Right. And so I was like, I started asking God, like, man, like we getting worn out before we get to the altar. Like, so I kind of was like asking God, what's going on? Like murder and then unexpected loss. And then I remember holding you and just hearing you wail over your father. So it wasn't like a honeymoon experience in the beginning.
No, it wasn't. Sorry, go ahead.
God was getting us ready. What I realize more now, he was getting us ready to deal with life together.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad he did it that way, because that elevated the quality of our relationship. See, a lot of people want everything good in the beginning.
Yeah.
If this is right, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of women make that mistake because they'll be like, he got to have this and this got to be right. If everything is right in the beginning, then it's a question mark.
Yeah.
See, with me and you,
I was like that though. Hands down.
Yeah, I mean,
that had to change me.
Yeah, no, it happens.
Yeah.
But see, when the relationship is tested the way me and your relationship was tested, the quality is there and there's no question marks. Like, if there's one thing, if a person was to ask me right now, Richard, can you and your wife stay together in hard times? I'd be like, yeah. And I won't be saying bragging, but we have been tested.
Yeah, to the core.
You was tested with me. When I was coming out of my old relationships and, I got involved in some of those ungodly soul ties. And 1 minute I was with you, and then 1 minute I was like dipping and dabbing in the street. You know what I'm saying? Going back to old relationships and doing all that was a test, because I was trying to break free and you was trying to help me break free and getting banged up a little bit while trying to help me break free. And I didn't want you to see me like that. Yeah.
And the thing was, what we were seeking after in that particular season is the heart of God. We were really trying to figure out, God, what is your will in all of this? And I had people in my ear like, yeah, that's your future husband. And my mom had felt, like in the spirit, like you were my husband, but you didn't know who I was to you. I didn't know who you were to me. And my dad died. And like, to your point, when your cousins died, how someone dies really matters. When someone dies peacefully in their sleep, both deaths are equally traumatic, but one carries a different type of grief than the other. So when your cousins got murdered, that was traumatic, because no one wants to think of their loved one just ruthlessly murdered. My dad had died, and grief changes you. You don't know who you are sometimes after grief. And so we had to deal with that. In that particular season, when you and I were getting to know one another, I didn't know you had a daughter. That was something else that we had to manage together, because I come from a family of, stepchildren. So I'm a stepchild. My stepfather raised me. I never called him stepfather. He was my dad that raised me. My mom was raised by a stepdad, but he was her dad. So we didn't come from a place where we had, step parents. They were fathers. Mm-hmm. And when I knew you had a daughter, I didn't envision that was the anticipated trajectory. I had wanted an opportunity to just start over and just be able to have develop our families together. And then when God called us together, it was a part of the assignment to be able to mother her too. And I was a mom before I was a mom. And before we even got down the altar, I had to take on that role. And also merging families together. People have different parenting styles. They have different values and core beliefs. And sometimes that works. And sometimes when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. So having to merge those things. Also, very early in our relationship, you always knew me as a size 13, being very full-figured as a younger girl. But at some point when I was graduating college, around the time you were kicking it to me, I had started putting on weight. That, you kicked it to me anyway, when a lot of guys at that particular time, they, the guys that used to kick it, holler all the time, were no longer hollering all the time. You were the one that was consistent, no matter what size I became.
Because they didn't know what they was missing.
Thank you, baby.
I don't mean to say it like that.
Yeah. But for me, I was carrying a lot of grief over the loss of my body, over the change of my body and how that affected my mental health. So not only am I having to grieve the loss of my dad, I am grieving over my former self and who I had become. Even though emotionally I was a stronger, more whole person and more grounded and rooted in Christ. But outwardly, my body was morphing into something I had no idea. And so I was handling a lot. And then you had your past baggage and I had my past baggage. And although, I like to think that, I had it all together, and I thought I did, until we started merging our lives together. And I started to see like, wait, I got some stuff going on. And so let's talk about old wounds. Old wounds are the things of your past that kind of just spring up out of nowhere. And a lot of times in grief opens up the heart. And so sometimes when our heart is open in grief, it brings up old things, like things about childhood, small traumas, big traumas, you name it, things that are unresolved. And a lot of times when those things just linger and need healing, it's like at any point during your life, it'll knock on the door like, hey, I need attention. And sometimes when you're merging two lives together, that stuff comes up. So in our relationship, what did old wounds look like for you? Well, as we were trying to merge and we were trying to come together, we started to see like when all the fuzzy feelings started going away and we had to deal with like each other's personalities. What did that look like for you?
Well, for me, with you, when I started to see other parts of you that I didn't see before, it was new for me, but it wasn't a deterrent. You know what I'm saying? Like I still wanted to be there. For me, I had a lot of old wounds because, a lot of women that I was in relationships with, they took advantage of the way I was raised. Like they knew in their mind, like Richard is raised to be respectful. He's raised to be kind. So they, with the exception of like maybe one or two women that I dated, the majority of them, because I dated older women. I never really was, as you know, I never really was into women that were younger than me. That was more difficult because they're more experienced in life. Even though people try to say that that might be easy, that's actually not true. But I was used to being psychologically taken advantage of, or at least people thinking that that's what was happening. There was a huge attempt to control me. So I did not, as you know, I did not like to feel regulated or controlled. So sometimes I think our pasts would clash and both of us could be triggered.
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't like feeling like controlled. If I liked a certain design, I didn't want you to say, well, Richard, why don't you use that one? And I'm like, well, why can't I use what my own mind chooses? Being the son of a preacher, people don't know how difficult that is. They think it's all prestige, but it's very difficult because as my father's only son, I had to fight for my identity because people were always trying to tell me who I was and control my narrative. And then people that wanted to control me, if they realized that they couldn't control me, then they would be like, well, I'm gonna go get your father. I'm gonna go tell your father. Like I was told that in school. I was told that in the schoolyard, in the playground. I'm gonna tell your father. I'm gonna tell you. Everything was, we know to go to Richard's parents to control him. So I was so used to people trying to control my narrative and trying to control me that I did not want to be controlled. And so if I felt that, which I'm sure you saw that sometimes.
You were ready.
Yeah, I was.
Hey, what about this? And you're like, no, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. Don't tell me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, but I'm glad that we grew because, see, what we have to understand as human beings, let our experiences teach us, but not hinder us. Yeah. And a lot of times we bring our baggage into the relationship and we lash out at the person we can see, but we mean it for the person who hurt us in our past. So that's what I woke up to. Like, and I was like, no, Ke'Shawn is not the other women I dated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that I'm glad I had the wherewithal. The Bible really helped me with that. But yeah, I'm used to people, even still to this day, I'm used to people trying to control me in some kind of way because how I grew up was, we know what your parents expect of you and we know what church you go to. So there was expectations while other people got to live how they felt they should live. And so, and then there was an added pressure. Like I fell into every minority group. But
you also had societal like expectations and like from every direction. So that made for a lot of pressure. Yeah,
it was from every direction, direction. So that was something that I brought into, I think, the beginning of the relationship. That was a wound because if there's anything I wanted is to have my own identity and write my own narrative instead of people telling me. Like I had people calling me reverend and preacher when I was in middle school. These were never titles I gave myself.
Yeah.
Now I did know God had put something in me. I did have visions of me preaching, but I wasn't old enough to really make sense of it all.
Yeah.
But I had people calling me reverend and preacher and associating me with that before I was old enough to, grow a mustache. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So one of the things that I could say for me, one of the old wounds that happened, especially after my dad died, was a sense of abandonment. that was something that I didn't realize was an issue, but it was an issue. Because I've lost so many different people, I had cumulative loss after loss. Like, I couldn't catch my breath. I would go through one death, and then right behind that death, there'd be another one. So I never had an opportunity to kind of feel like life was stabilizing. So it was always like someone was leaving. And so I always felt a sense of abandonment, not because they chose that, because they died. They couldn't help that. But in my heart, I couldn't catch my breath with feeling abandoned. And then when my dad died, that opened up Pandora's box. So I remember the first time it was illuminated in our counseling, because you and I, the one thing that we did, which was God ordained and was really smart, is we spent from the day we sat on that bench up until we got married 4 years of marital counseling from Reverend Dr. Tresmaine Grimes and Pastor Clarence Grimes. And, you know, we spent a lot of time, and there was some times in our sessions, we'd be coming in tight and we would leave tight because we had baggage. You were in some ungodly things. I had gotten into some ungodly things, and we're trying to merge this thing together. And we have all kind of spiritual attacks going on, people coming out of the woodwork, like, you know, people trying to holler that wasn't hollering, like, you name it, we had it. And we're trying to merge a blended family. We're trying to merge two personalities. We're trying to get past the rejection that we had went through with each other in the beginning. But one thing in counseling, what it taught us was that marriage is the first part of your calling. It's an assignment. And so before you start anything, it's like, first we needed to know we were supposed to be together. And God had confirmed that through my mom, confirmed it through your dad, and then he confirmed it in my times of prayer and fasting. And then he confirmed it through you. And then when we went to marital counseling, he confirmed it through our spiritual parents. So we knew all around we were supposed to be together. This just wasn't spiritual warfare and us just going through trials. We knew the enemy was trying to break us apart. And one of the things that happened, going back to the abandonment piece, one of the things that happened was you were leaving out the door, and something in me must have triggered something. And I'm like, where are you going? And you was like, I'm just going to the steps. And I was like, and you kept walking. And I was like, no, don't leave. And Mama Grimes had said, baby, it's okay. He's not leaving you. And that was the first time it was like, oh, you know, like perfect Ke'Shawn didn't have it so perfect. In my eyes, that was something that I had to grasp, like, yo, you got to work on that, because that can be a weight for him. That can be a sore spot for you. So we both had our stuff that we had to bring to the table. Leading up to this point, Valentine's Day is coming. Everybody's talking about love. But what happens when you realize that you need more than love in the relationship? You need more than love to make that thing last, because we definitely went through that. What did that look like for you?
Well, I look at it similar, but just with different words. Love, what people don't understand about love is they just look at the ecstasy part, the good part, the part that feels good. But if you read the Bible, love is a heavy load. Love is weight to carry, right? Yeah. But there's a difference. There's unhealthy weight and then there's healthy weight. Love is healthy weight, but we have to learn how to carry it. We have to learn how to sacrifice and even suffer for love. Like, one of the sufferings that I had to go through to get to the altar with you was crucifying my flesh, because in the time when you was out of the country and you was in your relationships, and, you know, I didn't think you were going to come around at one point. Then, you know, me doing music and, you know, doing comedy and, like I said, getting my feet wet in my career, I started meeting all these women, and then I got involved with ungodly soul ties. So I had to crucify that because I developed a taste for the world, and I had to kill that. Yeah. That war had to take place inside of me. Yeah. And so some love involves sacrifice. Sometimes love involves blood. And I don't mean through violence, but when you look at Jesus, what he did for man because he loved mankind. We have to do similar for our spouses. The wives have to do it. The husbands have to do it. We have to die to self in order to resurrect that spirit man that knows how to love. So I don't think it requires more than love. I think it requires the proper understanding of love. Yeah. The world does not have the proper understanding of love. The Christ-like biblical understanding of love and the intellectual humanistic view of love is two different things. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's why the divorce rate is so high, because discomfort, according to how the world does things, Discomfort is like, it's time.
Yeah.
But the vows say for better or for worse. Now, it doesn't mean, let me just make this disclaimer. It doesn't mean like for abuse and infidelity and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are going to be money problems. There's going to be death. There's going to be health issues. There's sometimes going to be body change. Like you was talking about the change in weight and how I was still into you, even though your weight had changed, right? Some people are ready to leave their spouse when their spouse doesn't look the way they did when they first got married. Mm-hmm. They don't want to sleep with them. They don't want to be next to them. They don't want to, you know what I'm saying? So love requires understanding. Most people outside of God don't understand love. Mm-hmm. So it requires an understanding. I had to understand your wounds and you had to understand mine. What happens in the world is people compete for the stage. Like my story is more profound and more significant than yours. So, and that's why you see men and women battling. On one side, you have women saying, well, we have it harder. I had it harder. And the man says, well, you don't understand me. It's because people are competing to see whose suffering and whose journey was more significant.
And that's never good.
Right. What me and you understood is that both of our journeys mattered and made us who we were at that time. But God can still change us and put us on a new journey together.
Yeah.
Now we had to choose to follow that.
That's the key. Choice.
Right. If we see, love involves choice. Yeah. And choice is a burden sometimes because it requires responsibility and wisdom. You have to have a sense of responsibility and you have to have a sense of wisdom to make that choice. That's why when people are confronted with choice, sometimes you see them going, I don't know, because they may not have had a chance to develop the wisdom and understanding so they're scared. See, once I knew that this was God, I didn't have no problem making a choice because I knew no matter what we go through, it got to turn out right, though. That's
the key. It was God.
I didn't mean to preach a sermon. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, but to your point, it key is when you know it's God, like there going to be some things that you go through in relationships where it's like, okay, dude, this is way too much. And it just shouldn't be that hard. Not that relationships are not going to be hard, but we knew who put us together. It wasn't, we weren't trying to do this on our own. And we had some major challenges way from the beginning. And not to say everything was bad, but it was a challenge. And if we're honest and real about it, it wasn't buttercups and lollipops and all of that stuff. It had all the beautiful moments. And the beautiful moments were, I had been waiting to get with you for so long. I had saw your identity and saw who God had made you. And the moments we were together, it felt like a love I've never experienced in this lifetime. So while it was also hard, there were the beautiful aspects. The person that you had wanted all your life had finally come around. And
that was crazy.
Yeah, and we were both on the same page. And the moment that God said, that's your husband, and he actually confirmed it with me, the glory of God came into my room and told me that was my husband. And when God spoke to your pastor, your father, and your family, and my family, it was like, okay. And it was like when God, my vow to God was, okay, if you tell me who this man is, I won't let go. And that was the thing. We both had a commitment, do it God's way. We both had a commitment to celibacy and doing it God's way. We both had a commitment to staying together no matter what came. And that was before the altar. And even when we were in counseling, because we understood that marriage is the first part of the calling. It's answering the first calling. Before you go and do anything in this world, that first calling was our marriage. And so once we had that, and then they asked us to do a mission statement. And our mission statement is divorce is not an option. Right. And so once we made that commitment, that kept us no matter what. Through all the changes of having a blended family and the transitions that brought on, through all the changes of all the obstacles and the spiritual warfare and your baggage and my baggage and trying to merge all that together, God was in it all. So now we're married, right? And we're dealing with the residue of my dad not being there and me wanting to make sure that my mom, we all stayed together because we prayed about that too. Because now I had the concern, not only did you have a daughter that we had to merge in, but I also had my mom fully functional, went to work, did her own thing. But we had to decide as a family, do we still want to be together as a family? And we did. And so now we're blending in multiple people in this small little family. But not long after that, we had a surprise. We had our baby Elizabeth a year and a half after we got married. So then life transitions, a lot of joys having a baby, but then there was so much grief alongside that. There was so much grief. So for starters, and I'll start this one, my pregnancy. I was 32. I was 32 years old, so I was already high risk because of age. I was high risk because of obesity. And there were several times we thought we lost her. Several times she wasn't moving. Several times we had to go to the hospital because she wasn't responding how she should. I had lost my job, 5 months pregnant. So the income that we had with that, I was running an office, and next thing you know, I had no job. So it worked out because I was pregnant, but then there's a loss of income. And while we were going through that, you were going through things on your job, which was traumatic. It was inhumane, the stuff that you were going through. We had the sandwich generation trying to raise children, and, you know, parents that were going through changes in their health. You were going back to school. There was health challenges because then after I had Elizabeth, I had my C-section opened back up and ruptured. So then I remember that. I was bleeding all over the place. So I thought I could have hemorrhaged to death. So right when we got started in our marriage, it was a lot of challenges during that time. And there was a lot of secondary losses. So now that we're married, what did you learn about grief in our marriage?
I learned a lot. Like, I learned that you never know when you're going to have to deal with grief. It comes out of nowhere. I learned that there's anticipatory grief and then there's unexpected grief. Like, we had a couple of deaths. After we were married, another one of my family members was murdered, stabbed to death in the housing projects, left for dead. And then a little before that, that's, you were talking about when your C-section opened back up, your high-risk pregnancy. There was the fear of grief and the fear of death because I was like, God, I don't want to lose my wife. I was watching you in the hospital, and only people who've had spouses or that women themselves who've dealt with high-risk pregnancies know what I'm talking about. But all the procedures and all the doctors and the nurses, when I was seeing all that and, watching, the blood come out of you and all of that, I was just like, I was keeping it together because I didn't want you to panic. But in my mind, I'm like, God, please, don't let nothing happen to her. So, while I was trying to enjoy the birth of our new baby, I was grieving the moments because the moments of happiness seemed to die so quick. Because we had just brought our baby home, and the first couple of days she was home, I hear you screaming in the bathroom, and I come, there's blood all over the floor. The next thing you know, ambulance is there, and I'm at the hospital with you. Then we're trying to figure out how to pay the bills, and nobody knows this is going on, really.
No, and nobody knows it's coming.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about
my gosh.
But I'm just talking about the outside world. Like, a lot of times people think that only they're having issues, but people had no idea what we was dealing with. No. Because of course we're private people, but the loss of, my wages were being stolen on my job. There was a lot of criminal activity going on at the job I was working at. Yeah. So I'm trying to take care, I'm not trying to be funny, but it was like a good times episode. I'm trying to take care of you and the family.
Good times.
Yeah, and the world outside, the employment world, is discriminating against me and not trying to allow me to be a man to take care of my family. So I was like, I have to say, I was like a little angry sometimes. I'm trying to say it nicely, but I was angry sometimes.
I mean, say it.
Yeah, I was angry sometimes, and I asked God why. I was angry just in general, but I was a little upset with God. Like, what's going on? Like, you see me trying to take care of my wife. As a man, I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm not selling drugs. I'm not doing all of this. I'm trying to work hard, and there's obstacles. And then I'm trying to be a father to our daughter, that we brought into the family. And then she has a new little sister, so I'm trying to merge the families. But I, like, mentally and spiritually, I am overwhelmed because I'm like, my God, my wife. Yeah. She's hemorrhaging. She's sick. She's hot. When the doctor came back in the office and was like, she's got to have this baby now. When we went to the doctor's appointment, I wasn't expecting him to come back.
We were excited. We were like, my gosh, it's another week away. She's coming. And then he's like, wait a minute. First, the nurse is checking out my sonogram. This is supposed to be like a joyous thing. She's checking out my sonogram and looked concerned. And then she's like, I'm going to get the doctor. And then she goes to get the doctor. And then he was like, you got to get to the emergency room like stat.
Yeah, so I had to call my job. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, you called my mom. And we're like, we just hauled over to the emergency room. And I was in labor and delivery for like 5 days. And she wouldn't come out. She wouldn't come out. And they were trying not to do a C-section because of the weight and because of the side effects of all that could have caused. Hemorrhaging, heart attack, blood clotting, the C-section rupturing, all the things. And so they were trying to not go there, but then it was like she wasn't coming out, and everything, they used every device under the sun. So we stayed in labor delivery. You slept in there with me, and so did my mom, for like 5 days. And I was being tortured trying to get her out. I mean, and I wasn't on any pain meds, and they were trying everything after a while. So you had to watch that. And then 2 weeks later, after I bring her home, I'm putting her in her swing. You're on your way to church. And all of a sudden I'm bleeding, and I don't know where I'm bleeding from. And there's blood everywhere. And so I'm mad at God, because I'm like, I don't understand. Why does this have to be so hard? Like, it just seemed like everything was just so hard. And my mom spoke a word in the labor and delivery room. And she said, which broke everything in us. Like, it broke all of the disappointment. And she said, with the Israelites, that journey could have took a couple of days. But, because of the things they needed to learn, God took them the long way because of their calling. And when she said that about us, it may feel like things are unfair, but God is taking you the long way because of your calling, because of what God put in you. There's some things you got to learn. There's some things in faith you got to develop along the way. So while we're saying all the different parts of the grief of our marriage, what's really important to highlight is nothing in God is ever wasted. And if he brings you through it, it's because he has a purpose for it. And because of the trials that we went through, every trial we went through, it can either make you better or bitter. And I think for us, and for me, when grief tried to pull us in different directions, you and I would lock arms, which is what we were taught in counseling. We would lock, and we would pray together, and we would war together. And I think we learned that before we got to the altar. We had to learn what prayer was like before we got to the altar, what staying together and being committed looked like when things fell apart. And maintaining honor before God in our commitment, because we both gave God a vow. Divorce was not an option. Unless you were beating on me, I'm beating on you, or there's some type of other crazy stuff going on in a relationship. We got to thug this thing out. And when I realized that it had to be beyond love is when I realized that it had to be a choice. And I had to humble myself a lot of times to God and his will and his way, and to our circumstances, and let God have his way. And so there we are. We had our new baby. Later on, we were able to get our oldest daughter, and we had a full family. And God was bringing it all together and giving us the recipe for what warriors look like in marriage. And so how did you grow and learn and evolve with all of the things that we were going through?
Well, I learned that problems doesn't mean it wasn't meant to be. And that's what walking with God requires us to understand. That's what's required. It requires an understanding of that to walk with God. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Problems does not mean it wasn't meant to be. Problems does not mean God is not with you.
Yeah.
And that's what made me, I remember I first said this on a Facebook post, but then I said it in a sermon too, that problems are often looked at as a sign that God may not be there.
Yeah.
But sometimes troubled waters and storms is a sign that God is there. Because the presence of God disrupts things. The presence of God brings about fire and pruning. And so sometimes when God comes into your life, when you allow him into your life, there's going to be some losses that happen. There's going to be some things that fall off. There's going to be some people that leave. That's because God is there. Yeah. So when me and you got married, I lost a lot of people. When I left the music business, or my music group, and went into the ministry, and I lost a lot of people, a lot of friends. So then when we got married and we went through the storms that we went through, I learned that they make the relationship stronger if we stick together. So when me and you prayed together, and when we made the decision, like, no matter how hard it gets, we're gonna stick it out.
Yeah.
We saw God. Sometimes you see God in answered prayers. And I remember when I was only making a few dollars, just trying to pay bills and feed the family, trying to make sure you were healthy and okay. Now look where God has brought us. So he brought us through a process. The last thing I'll say is this: process is important. People avoid process, but process helps sustain the blessing.
Amen.
See, I prayed this prayer. See, sometimes we got to be careful what we pray, because God will give it to you, but it won't feel like you think it's going to feel. What I mean is, I prayed a prayer, and I still have it written in my prayer book on the shelf behind me. I said, God, before you elevate me, bless me with the right attitude before you elevate me. So in order for me to have the right attitude, we had to go through what we went through.
Yeah. Amen. So as we're wrapping up, I wanted to touch on, as a man, I had lost my job. We have this baby. Now we have 2 children. We're trying to provide for them. As a man, you were in the height of your career. And so just want to share with the people what you did at the beginning of our relationship and why you chose that career.
I was a substance abuse counselor at the beginning of our career, at the beginning of our relationship. And then I went to school and got degrees in human services, right? Mm-hmm. And what brought me to that career was that my father struggled with drugs before he got saved. And I remember him praying at the altar for God to deliver him. And God one day delivered him from drug use. And then he took me right back to the places where he used to hang out and get high. He took me with him, and I watched him take his Bible and perform spiritual human services out in the street. He preached to people in the street. And I remember when they saw him coming back, they used to call my father Sleep. That was his street name. And I remember people who were still high and still drunk, even when he was preaching to them. When he came in the projects and he came by the laundromat under the bridge on North Avenue, where they used to get high and, shoot dope and all that, my father came over there and it was like, my God, Sleep, I remember when you used to get high. I remember when you used to go to jail. I remember when you got shot by the police. This is really what I heard them say, because my father got shot by the police and some of those people were there when it happened. So I watched my father get clean and go back and preach to the people. And so my father always told me, never forget the people. He said, when God calls, you got to love the people. And so years later, because he started taking me out to the street ministry when I was like 9 to 10 years old. Years later, when I graduated high school, it took me like 6 months or a year maybe to figure out I wanted to help people that were on drugs. And so I met some drug counselors on the job I was working at as a security guard, and they started telling me what it was about. And I learned from them. Then next thing you know, I went to school for it before going to college. And I got my certificate in substance abuse counseling or addiction studies. And I started working in the field. But what led me to that was seeing my father's miracle. Mm-hmm. I think that was one of the most profound things that ever happened to me in my life. As a kid, I saw my father's miracle because I remember my father before he got clean. You know what I'm saying? I remember that.
Yeah. What were some of your greatest joys in choosing that career?
Some of my greatest joys in choosing that career was people seeing restored hope, because I did that with my heart and my soul. I believe because I saw my father redeemed, I believe I don't care how bad the person is on drugs, if they're on crack, if they're in jail, if they're homeless, I believe God can redeem anybody. Amen. You see the spirit kicking up. Yeah. I believe God can redeem so there's nobody I've ever counseled that I didn't believe God could heal. Mm-hmm. So one of my greatest joys was the hope that was ignited in me and the clients. Because when I went to work every day, in the back of my mind, I was saying somebody's going to overcome. Mm-hmm. And that hope would translate into the client, because if you don't believe what you're doing, you're not going to help anybody. Mm-hmm. So my joy was in believing.
What I had the privilege of sojourning with you was while you were at the beginning, at the foundation of your career, watching you with your case actee at the beginning and getting your first job. I saw you grow over time, and you went back to school, you got your associates, then I watched you get your bachelor's, and then recently you got your MSW from Fordham University. So I watched your evolution over time. Yeah. I watched you work through that thing. It was like no matter what storm we were in. And so celebrating the fact that you got it, but also identifying the fact that there was some grief with that too. And so just in a short few words, what did that grief look like? Trying to get your education, having a family, and trying to provide for your family, all while doing that at the same time.
You had some days where I felt so tired. I was like, God, can I go on? Yeah. Can I go on? But then there was the agony of there being no choice, because let me tell you, that world out there is cold-blooded. And so I always had in my mind, I said, if my wife doesn't have to work, I don't want her to have to, because it would be hard for a wife to deal with that cold-blooded world and then come home and try to make a house a home. So I said to myself, I gotta finish school. I gotta do this, because I don't want my wife to have to be out there doing this in this cold, cruel, wicked world, ruthless. I don't want her to have to be doing this and then trying to take care of me and cultivate a home. You understand what I'm saying? Because a home itself is a ministry. A home itself is a job. So the grief was that innocent me that used to exist died, because life was real.
Yeah. That's a word right there. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens also. Sometimes we're going through so many different things in life that it feels like it kills a part of us. It can kill the joy. It can kill just who we are. We can really and I know for me, grief has definitely toughened me up. Some of my sweet little ways kind of like it ebbed away a little bit. It hardened me a little bit. And so trials can do that to you. So how do you bounce back from that? How do you bounce back after you keep taking hit after hit? How do you preserve that part of yourself that God wants to use so you can not only not bleed on other people, allow your wounds to bleed on other people, but preserve, you know, the beauty that God has put inside of each of us?
Well, the way you preserve it is understanding this: whether you're in the will of God on the right path, or whether you're outside of the will of God on the wrong path, the path of destruction, you're going to go through something. The best way to preserve that valuable, wonderful, fearfully and wonderfully made part of you is, if you're going to go through something, let it be in God's will. Because if it's in God's will, you'll do more than survive. You'll overcome, and you'll come out with that part of you even stronger and better. We know life helps us understand, and the Bible teaches you, nobody comes to this world unscathed. We're going to be touched by life. It's better to go through something in God's will, because then that's how you don't lose that self that God has given you. People lose themselves when they go through things or put themselves through things outside of God's will. There's some things on us and in us that have to die, but it'll make us better. But you got to let God take you through the process. Yeah.
I think for me, the importance was therapy. It was working on healing, because I understood that there were pieces of me that was collapsing, and me going to therapy was really a breakthrough for me, because it really taught me how to take care of myself. And being diagnosed later with lupus, it really taught me on how to treat my body differently. And I've always been really proactive, even with gaining weight and the obesity, which was out of my control. But it put me on a track where I had to get to the root of some of my issues with some of the ailments in my body. And so I started seeing different doctors, and that can treat me holistically. So I think for me, it was about being really intentional about self-care and about making sure that I'm healing, so that I'm not changing and becoming bitter, because it would be a disservice to you and our family and to ministry and to my own life and my own future if I allowed those things to make me bitter. So one of my final questions is, what have you learned about me through grief? And then what have you learned about yourself through grief?
What I learned about you through grief is that your grieving process led you to what you do now. And I didn't know that at first when I was seeing you go through things involving grief. But now seeing you as a grief coach, I knew, like just what I had said before, God had you on a path, even though there was some loss experienced. It's birthed your ministry. Yeah. So you were being impregnated by your journey. And spiritually, you gave birth to these ministries. Yeah. What I learned about grief is that I needed to be married to you for many reasons. And one of the reasons was learning about myself with grief. I consider myself grieving like a man, because me and my father, as I told you, we don't visit grave sites. I've never visited a grave site for any of my deceased relatives or friends, because that's the way I believe I was taught. You know, why seek ye the living among the dead, right? I took that as don't visit the grave site. So the way I survived, especially with experiencing traumatic losses, like my cousin passed away when the other one was murdered, the other one was shot. The way I avoided those traumatic psychological memories was just hold on to the memories when they were alive, but don't go visit the gravesite, because it'll remind me that they're dead. So I grieve in I guess you could say I don't want to say a chauvinistic way, but a macho.
Maybe a practical.
Yeah, practical way. Yeah. But I learned that about myself. I didn't really pay it attention until I heard you moderating with the other grief coaches and David Kessler, and learning. I was listening, so I would hear stuff. And then me and you had talks. And then when you wrote your book, it really made me reflect on myself. Wow, I grieve in a very hard, closed way. Mm-hmm. It has worked for me, but it's caused me to take a look at it again. So that's what I learned about myself.
Okay. And just for, anyone listening, David Kessler always talks about that we are our own experts in grief, and we have to grieve according to what works for us. And we have to meet each other where we are. So I know you didn't like the grave site, so I had to respect that. I've learned in getting older, I never used to go visit the grave site, but then I started to, because I wanted to honor my family. Because even though they are spiritually not there anymore, physically, that's where they still exist, and I wanted to honor them. So whatever feels right to you, that's perfect for you. There is no right or wrong way in how we grieve. So want to end off on, what were some of the greatest joys of marriage? Because we talked about a lot of heavy stuff. What were some of the greatest joys in our marriage?
Well, that heavy stuff was joy for me because it showed me that we belong together, that we could do this. In Christ, we could do
it.
But yeah, but one of the greatest joys is you understanding me and your willingness to understand me. You're not selfish in the area where understanding is required. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're not selfish in no area, but you're not selfish in the area particularly where understanding is required. Like the world, listen, I consider the world an enemy, not the people, but I'm talking about the dark forces within it. So I don't feel safe out there in a sense. But when I'm next to you, you understand me as a man, as a Christian, as a preacher, as a black man. You understand me and you're willing to understand me. So one of the greatest joys is not only having a home, like physically, but my heart has a home in you. Because I can really give you my heart every day. And for the first time ever, trust. Because that's not easy for a man. You know, sometimes women think they have trust issues. I think in a way some men have more because our heart is not even considered. But with my heart, I can trust you. And the greatest joy is when that world beats up on me and I come home, like you nurse my wounds instead of picking at them. Like you understand, you're one woman that understand. You're in feminine energy, there's an architect, right? And what the world does, and I'm gonna be quick, but what the world does is they make femininity seem like toxicity. It's two different things. Just like there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. In your feminine power, there's an architect, and that architect builds up men. You build me up.
Amen.
You build me, and you do it by supporting my efforts to build myself. So there's you present a positive challenge. There's no excuse for me not to excel and not to be a good husband because you build me up. You help me build me, and in turn, you help God build me. You don't tear me down. And so I have no choice but to be a good husband and to try to be the best I can be. And that's one of the greatest joys because when I come home, I know I'm not going to be fought and beat on, but I'm going to be enhanced. That's the greatest. I wish other people could experience that.
Yeah.
That's the great joy, one of the greatest joys of being married to you. Outside of you being a prayer warrior, when I'm going through spiritual attacks in my sleep and those dreams, when I hear you speaking in tongues over me, it goes away. And it's so amazing when I have a pain in my body and you touch where the pain is and it subsides. That's a miracle. Amen. So the joy and the godliness in your womanly character is just a joy to be around.
Oh, that's so sweet, man.
Matter of fact, where are you? No, I'm just kidding. I want to come to you now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just serious.
Soon come. Some of the joys of marriage is I got to marry my best friend.
Yes.
I got to marry my best friend. I get to walk this life with someone I truly respect and admire, and that keeps me laughing all the time. Like, you are like literally sunlight that walks in the room. One day Elizabeth said, Daddy's like the sun. You are like the sun. Mm-hmm. Not only do you carry the attributes of Jesus himself, the humility, the kindness, the love, the care, like you really take care of your family. Like you go hard for your family. You are extremely sacrificial. You've loved me wherever I found myself in life. You loved me when I was in an ungodly relationship. You loved me when I was smaller. You loved me when I had gotten bigger. You loved me in sickness. You loved me and in health. You loved me, and you make sure you take care of the little girl on the inside. That little girl needs tending to sometimes because I still feel like that little girl. And you tend to her and you tend to the adult. And I have found meaning outside of Jesus, because Jesus is the core. But outside of Jesus, I have found such delight and meaning in life. We get to travel and explore life together and find new things together. I have discovered who I am in a different way being with you. I have discovered who I am as an individual, and I have discovered who I am with Richard. And I could have never picked you out because I was not wise enough. I was not smart enough, although you were all of that. In my worldly perception, I had to really let God kill a lot of things in me in order for me to love you properly. Because worldly love is not love. That's lust. That's infatuation. That's conditional. But you and I have had to humble ourselves even when we're fighting, even when we're angry, even when we disagree. God always, he taught us very from the beginning to humble ourselves to him first, and to love one another more than our right to be right. And so that is always the thing. You and I always manage to come back together, always make peace, and don't harbor or hold resentments. And so I literally can live freely in my marriage with you and just be able to enjoy you as a person. I get to go to sleep with my best friend and have a slumber party every night.
Yep.
So that's some of the greatest joy. So quickly, what do you want to leave the people with? I know we've said a lot, but what is, just in a few words, what would you want to leave the people with?
Let God be the head of your life. Let him put your relationships together. Forget what you think you know. Men and women both have to come and sit at the feet of Jesus. Men don't know it all, and women, you don't know it all. You both have to come together and humble yourself. Because some people come to Jesus like, fix them for me. And no, we both need to be pruned and shaped and molded by God. Once you know that, there's nothing you can't achieve in Christ. Sit at the feet of Jesus and wait for him to do it. Amen.
So before we close, we covered a lot today, and I'd like for us to just center ourselves and take a couple of deep breaths and just say what we're grateful for. So I invite you to close your eyes. I invite you can inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. So I'm just going to do a little counting and do a little deep breathing. So we're going to inhale through our nose. We're going to hold for 3 seconds. 2, 1. We're going to exhale through our mouth. We're going to try that again. We're going to inhale through our nose. Hold for 3 seconds. 2, 1. We're going to exhale. We're going to say in a few words what we're grateful for, and I'll start. I'm grateful for my husband, Richard Adamson II. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for our family. I'm grateful for the gift of life. I'm grateful that my circle has not been broken and that he's preserved my family. I'm grateful for health. I'm grateful for love. I'm grateful for this moment of time of walking in purpose. I'm grateful for Jesus. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for life, health, and strength. I'm grateful for God's mercy. I'm grateful for his forgiveness of sin. I'm grateful for Jesus' shed blood on Calvary. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for marriage. I'm grateful for God's ministry. I'm grateful for the purpose that he has given me in my life and the direction. I'm grateful for my children and my family.
All right. Well, thank you, baby. I'm so grateful you were able to come on with me today. Thank you for joining us at Unstuck Worldwide Grief Cafe. Thank you for sharing the sacred space with me. Please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share this episode of Grief Cafe. Follow, like, and subscribe on all social media platforms. Unstuck_, I see he's doing the fist. Social media platforms at Unstuck_worldwide. If you'd like to know more about my recent debut book, My Love Letters to the Grieving, You Are Not Alone, you can visit unstuckworldwide.com. And please like, follow, and subscribe to Richard Adamson II on all social media platforms. Thank you again for joining us. God bless you, and I look forward to our next episode coming very soon. Thank you, and God bless.